Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. So my name is Pat O'Mara. I joined the board back in April. So it's been about 6 months of really quite busy work, but we've been building on good work that's been done in the past. And Lady Rita mentioned that I was appointed as the vice chair. I think I volunteered, anyways, but delighted to do that as well. And I was in the NHS for 40 years, retired from the Scottish Ambulance Service in April, but actually I've gone back to do a bit of work. So I've just spent a week up in Caithness and Sutherland vaccinating, would you believe? So it wasn't hard work. It was quite enjoyable. So I'm still doing a little bit of clinical work as a paramedic out there, but finished full-time work. My last big job was last November, where I was responsible for all of the medical planning for the response to the UN Conference of Parties, COP26, which was the biggest event in Scottish history. And in the middle of that, there was the Coalition Parade, which was the biggest march in Scottish history. So I put all that behind me now, and I'm devoting some of my time, along with Lady Rita, the executive team and non-executive team, to develop the agency's work. So just coming on to that, because that's the important stuff. Let's see what we've got here. What can you see on the screen behind you? That one, that's fine, that's okay. So I'm going to talk about our priorities, and I'm going to talk about it for about 15 minutes. But I think the important thing is at the end of this, I've got some questions for you. Okay, and the reason for that is, as was said earlier, all the experience is in this room. And we can have the greatest ideas, the greatest priorities, the greatest action plan and everything else. But unless it can be delivered, unless it's meaningful, unless it answers what you need to do and how you can do it at the sharp end, where all the activity actually takes place, it's just words on bits of paper. So your input is crucial to the work of the agency. But I'm going to talk a little bit about our priorities. And no surprise, our priorities align to In God's Image version 2. There are 6 broad key functions, which I'll come on to. And within that, 42 actions. I'm not going to go through them all. I'll just touch on some of them. They're not in any that I've just specially pulled out, but I'll touch on some which I thought I should just mention. And then I'll talk about some subcommittees of the board that have just formed and how they're going to support the work of the agency as we go ahead. So just to talk then about key functions. You can see here that this is the first of the first 3 of the 6 key functions of the board, and right up at the top there, as you would expect, take account of the perspective of survivors of abuse, and you can see the functions lead to an action plan underneath. So I'm not going to go through all the actions, but I am just going to touch on these key functions. So we've already met with some survivors, and I have to say that when we were doing our induction training, which Michael had organised, we met with some survivors of abuse, and we know the work of the agency is important, but meeting these people, just goodness me, it just brought home the lifelong damage that abuse has caused to the harm that's been caused to people, and it really made us sit upright. And there were a few moments of lumps in throat and everything else as we were talking about work. So unsurprisingly, one of the key functions of the agency is to take account of their perspective as we develop our practice and so on. There is good work going on across the country, and we've seen the independent audit reports and so on, and we've seen other stuff as well already, and it's really impressive. But I suppose as the agency goes on, we probably want to, help people and say, look, there should probably be some consistency, and if there's good practice going on in one area, we'd want to share that good practice somewhere else. So another key function then is promotion of national standards. And a link to that is, if people are doing well, great. If people aren't doing so well, how do we help them? How do we hold your hand so that you don't fall over and so that you know what direction we'd like you to go in? So there's going to be, as well, just monitoring and reviewing of compliance with the standards. And you can see bottom right of the screen there that for all of the standards, the key functions, there are a number of discrete actions. I'm not going to go through them all. As I say, I'll touch on them. So the last 3 sort of broad areas is leading safeguarding learning, and I've touched on that already. We're awfully keen to look at whistleblowing and how do we respond to complaints about responses to safeguarding allegations. So that's work to come. And again, we'd be very keen to hear what your views are. And of course, communications about national policy and practice, and how will we do that? How will we communicate with survivors, with clergy, with religious, with diocese, whoever it might be, parishes, everything else. So there's going to be some work done, a lot of work done on communications. Leading on then from those functions, there are 42 actions, which I've already said I'm not going to go through, but I'm going to touch on some of them. And you can see here that the first kind of actions are engaging with those who've experienced abuse and invite them to offer their perspectives. So we've already had people that we've engaged with. Some people have come to us with very positive views about the work of the agency already, and saying how they want to support what we do. Other people have come across and were actually people who are obviously very unhappy, and that's okay. We expect that. But all these people's views are equally important. Another action is to, our work as a board, as an agency, will be informed by the experience of survivors, because they're the ones who've been harmed, and they're the ones who can, I suppose, act as an anchor for us in terms of how we develop our work and say, this is what we think you should be doing, and that sounds like a great idea, or whatever else. And coming back to where the work is at the sharp end in the parish or elsewhere, how do we develop advice and resources to ensure that we're really effective at what we do? I think there's someone at the back touching buttons. Is that what's happening? You've got it. Oh, well, that's what's throwing me. So I'm wondering why I'm not touching any buttons and it's moving. Right, okay. No, not at all. Not at all. It's really helpful. So just a few more to run through, and then I'm going to come on to the questions. National safeguarding resources, and I've talked about consistency across the country, but in order to achieve that, we need to have a set of national guidance and support and everything else in place for diocesan teams and so on. So how do we lead that? How do we manage that? And as I've said, top down, there'll be stuff coming, but equally we want the stuff to come from bottom up, so the people who are doing the work will inform what we do as much as we're helping inform you. Communications I've already spoken about, and just that kind of considering the outcomes of safeguarding audits and implications for practice or whatever. Moving on then, we also want to, this is the last slide, well, I've got one more slide after this, but this is the last slide. So we're going to report annually on issues, and that's just to help tell people what we're doing, but equally to help you to say, well, actually, that's great to hear. We seem to be along the right lines, or we've still got work to do where we are. And what trends are emerging. Helena and others will be setting up this STAG, this Safeguarding Training Advisory Group, a learning network nationally, and I've mentioned a communications plan. So I've taken as I would say to Lady Rita, a quick canter through that, but it's 42 different actions, and those actions, I've popped my email address at the end. So quite a lot, in fact, an awful lot of stuff that we'll be doing in the future. And we'll be reporting, and we'll come back, we know, in a year's time, much better informed as an agency. For people like myself, who I'm very new to this safeguarding world. It's a huge learning curve for me, but it'll be good to come back in a year's time and celebrate success. I'm just going to talk about the board subcommittees. So what we've done to help Helena, Paul, and Mari with their work, we've set up 4 subcommittees. So I'm just going to ask them to stand up this time and face you so you can see who they are. So the first one is Mari. Could you so Mari's going to look after survivor engagement. That's Mari. And I won't mention whose birthday it is today, because Mari will be embarrassed by that. But happy birthday, Mari. Would you like us to sing happy birthday to you? No, okay, all right. Greg, if you could just stand up, please. That's great. And he's looking after policy and resources. And Claire, where's Claire? Oh, you're hiding over there. Okay, thank you, Claire. And finally, Pauline. So I hope I haven't embarrassed you at all or anything, but thank you very much. And we're all, as Lady Rita said, we're all itching. We're all really, really keen for the agency to be a fantastic success. It has to be. It can't be anything else. It would be madness for us not to be the best that we possibly can be. And we are energized by the need to do the work of safeguarding. So I suppose that's just, as I said, I've just kind of fired through a lot of what we're doing, but I've got some questions for you. I said that right at the beginning. And these questions, if you wouldn't mind, Paul, I've been in senior management before I retired for a number of years, and you would have a great policy document and you'd go and ask people who are doing the actual work, have you seen that document? No, I haven't, or I don't understand it, or I don't understand what it means. So we can have the best action plan, we can have the best, in God's image isn't a light read. It's a good document, but it's not a light read. And how do you make it, come alive? How do you make it work where you are? So these are the questions for you. So as we do our work as an agency, what are you hoping for from us? What are you hoping for from the agency's work to support, guide, and so on? And what will your part be in that? Will you be an active participant? Will you be passive? I'm not saying you have to be one or the other, but what will your part be? And as we set out our priorities, how will you respond to that? And lastly, what's your feedback? And that's the most important thing for us, is you telling us what you think, and you must be honest with us. And if we're doing something right, it would be great for you to say, well done, thank you. That's just absolutely nailed, hit the nail on the head. But if we're not, it's equally important for us not to be going off at a tangent somewhere and wasting time and effort, particularly when everyone is so busy and the work is so important. So I'm not going to talk about the breakout groups because someone else is going to do that. But as we go into those breakout groups shortly, these are the kind of things that we want from you. And we've got some more questions to help, I suppose, stimulate discussion within the groups. So the last slide is my agency email address. And by all means, if you ever want to get in touch, take a photograph of that or write it down or whatever else. And you'd be very welcome to get in touch with me.